we're here today with David Waldas. He's a psychic healer as well as the creator of the HSP Solution. And he's going to kind of tell you what that is and how he got into this field.
Cool. So I think really starting by describing what a highly sensitive person is. And it's often referred to as an empath as well.
Right.
And so these are the people that don't just understand people's emotions, but they actually feel them. And that's really the biggest way to tell if you're an empath or not, or a highly sensitive person is most people just have the experience of maybe understanding where somebody's coming from. So if they're upset or they're angry, they can kind of go, oh, well, that's how I feel when I'm upset or angry. And then they kind of understand that. But for those of us that are highly sensitive, as we all are, right? We actually feel what they're what they're actually experiencing. And we run it through our body. And so it's a huge gift, but it comes with a huge price too, right? And so to operate in this world where we're feeling everybody's everything, it really gets confusing about what's ours, what's other people's, and it really affects how we feel about ourselves, depending on who we're around. It really affects how we interact with everybody, the types of jobs or careers we can go into. And it really can be debilitating if you're working in the negative. And so this program that I created is all about teaching people how to work with this as a gift. And there's tons of stuff out there, like if you Google empath or highly sensitive person, about how to deal with the symptoms. Because the symptoms really are about emotional overwhelm. They're about how to deal with energy vampires, so to speak, or people that are, drawing your energy from you or not picking up other people's.
For that.
Right? And so to me it was like the idea of, if we have a leaking boat and we keep bailing it, all our energy goes into bailing the boat. And so treating symptoms is like that. We're just constantly bailing this boat. Like, this never ends, It's like, well, we might as well go bail the ocean and see how far you get, right? And so many people really get caught up in their life of just experiencing symptom after symptom, dealing with the symptoms, finding coping mechanisms. And some of us have gotten really good at it, right? We tend to fluctuate between loving being around people to like, I just want to be by myself. And then we get bored and go back and forth, and we fluctuate between complete emotional overwhelm and boredom. And so we're really kind of complicated and confusing to ourselves and to other people that they don't know who they're going to get when they come across this, because we could be anywhere on that range. And it's so, I don't want to use the word undiagnosed, but it's kind of, when people don't know how different they are, it's funny how many people have come across that just have no idea they're highly sensitive because they were born that way. So they assume that everybody else's experience of being alive and being on this planet is the same as theirs.
Yeah, definitely. Right, before I met you, I felt I knew it about myself, but I didn't know how to label it, and I didn't know what it was actually going on. So just to have this clarification, I think, is really helpful for people that also feel like this.
Right. Yeah, and if you don't know that there's a way forward too with it, it just feels like a life sentence. It feels like, my boat's
how I am.
Yeah. And so then we get really caught up with that. And what I've seen over time too is people that get so attached to the victimhood in it. Because when you're feeling everybody's everything, so if somebody's angry and they're like a block away and you're seeing them fighting with somebody else and you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish they would stop doing that. After a while, we get this kind of sense of it's happening to us, right? And so victimhood is so readily available for any empaths or highly sensitive people because the energy is coming into them, they're feeling it, and they're being affected by it. So everything becomes a threat. And then we get frustrated with how other people are acting around us because don't they understand how it affects us? Yeah. And they don't.
I have no idea. No.
We have this whole drama going on about, I can't believe they're doing this to me. And they're like, I didn't even know you were there.
The way it goes. The way it goes.
Right? So what the work that I do is really teaching people how to rearrange their energy field so that we're not tapping into everybody's stuff. And we don't let go of the gift of knowing because we still so deeply understand the world, but we don't need to emotionally process everything that we come across. So we shut all that down, reset it, and open up internally. And then what we get to feel is what we feel like when we're not running everybody else's ideas and everybody else's emotions through us. And so what that creates is incredible clarity, incredible purity, a sense of self that we've never known before because we always believed everybody else's ideas about who we were based on the other people's fears and the other people's projections. And so highly sensitive people tend to have a self-esteem and a self-concept that's all over the place. They can feel amazing all the way to feeling like dirt, and that could all happen in the same 30-second time period, depending on who shows up.
Exactly, that's real. Yeah.
Right. So this program really allows people to move into a place of choice. They can see right away within a few minutes of working with the actual activations and the energy work that we do that there is something different available to them.
Right.
And then the next part comes with really choosing, this is how I want to hold my energy, and this is how I want to experience the world. And it's so much of a deeper understanding, so much more of a deeper ability to appreciate people around you because they're not a threat anymore.
Right.
So we get to be so much closer to them. We get to be so much more helpful. And at first, for a lot of people, they feel like, oh, if I do that, then I'm going to be disconnected and I'm going to let go of my relationships. And it's not. They become so much deeper because it's not threatening for us to connect anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're not going to, their emotions aren't contagious anymore.
Exactly. Yes. So free.
So how do you recognize your clients, and what is your kind of demographic, and who you focus on to kind of help them improve?
Right. So, yeah, it's so interesting when I connect with people. Quite often it's really easy for me to feel, because I do have that psychic aspect to myself, and that, finely tuned, highly sensitive person, empath, where I can feel where people are at. And so it's always really obvious to me right from the beginning, who is a candidate.
Right.
As far as us being able to help, but there's also kind of a willingness too.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We have to quite often be very clear that we're pretty frustrated by the challenges that our high sensitivities are causing. And so sometimes I'll come across people and they're so caught up with the gift of being able, it really feels special to be able to feel what people are feeling. And they may know that this isn't something everybody carries. And so I really get that idea of like, wow, I can really help people. But there's something that really interesting that happens with people getting stuck too. Do you want me to explain that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So it's so interesting. We naturally want to help everybody. We're highly sensitive because we can feel their suffering and we don't want them to suffer. But on top of that, their suffering's running through us, right? So we can't even focus on our own stuff until we take care of theirs. So it's almost like emotional ADHD. We're constantly our focus is jumping into everybody else's. And so we have to help them when we're tapped into them. And so when we learn to just actually be able to stay internally, feel what they're feeling, experience what they're experiencing without the emotional overwhelm, we can actually make a lot more choices in how we interact with them. But until that point, we feel like we're just drawn right in and we jump in. And the first thing we do is we make them feel comfortable where they're stuck, right? And so any of you that have made big changes in your life, it's generally always preceded by a time of discomfort.
Yes.
Right? We get to that level of discomfort and we're like, you know what, I was really afraid to step forward, but I'm not as afraid anymore. At least I didn't, compared to how frustrated I am, I'm not afraid. And so we let go of the fear because the frustration or the discomfort becomes much bigger than the fear. And so as highly sensitive people, we have no idea we're doing this, but we try to make people feel better. We make them feel better where they're stuck. And they're like, well, I don't feel that stuck anymore. It feels okay. Thanks for joining me here.
Right.
And so we drop our frequency and let go of what we're creating to join them where they're at. So they're more comfortable, like, oh, they're not suffering anymore. So now I'm not suffering because I'm not feeling their suffering. And we get stuck together and it becomes this gridlock. And it's such a trap.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. So when we disconnect from that, we get to move forward. Once people seem to get that concept, quite often anybody that feels other people's emotions are really open to working with me. But that sometimes is the biggest breakthrough moment for them. But I help people every day. And yes, we do. And no judgment in it. Like that was me until a year ago for my whole life, and just feeling such passion and feeling other people's emotions and going where they were stuck and doing the work with them.
Right.
But since I've kind of moved into this different perspective and seen what happens on the other side of it, I realized how much I was getting myself stuck and helping them stay stuck at the same time.
Exactly. And I think this could have a lot of implications for some of our viewers. If you might have a mental illness, diagnosed or not, a lot of times you feel emotions really deeply and you could be stuck. So something like this may be really eye-opening to you.
Yeah, I think just engaging in this sort of just enlightenment allows you to kind of get a baseline for where you're at. I mean, I had never really identified as a highly sensitive person. I was not really knowledgeable at all about this, and we just did my reading, and it just gave me a whole other perspective that I'd never even, it was familiar because it's me, but it's unfamiliar because I'd never thought about it in that way. And I mean, already I'm like feeling good, feeling great, ready to go.
It's amazing how many other diagnoses are really related to being highly sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like any kind of anxiety disorders, anything that deals with emotional overwhelm, anything that deals with our attention being all over the place.
Right.
It really is us picking up on what we're around. And so you've had the experience of maybe being out in the woods by yourself, or somewhere if you're out maybe in a boat or something like that where you're separate from other people. How different do you feel?
Right.
And that's usually another big indicator of like, if you feel totally different when you're around other people, you're taking it in. We all do to some level. But
yeah,
we're pretty good at it.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Another thing that we're really interested to hear from you is how you got involved and how early you knew about this, like your sense of emotion and your intuitiveness and all of this.
Right? Yeah. You know, I had no idea growing up. You know, it's like so many people that are highly sensitive, we just assume our experience is everybody else's. Mm-hmm. And people that aren't highly sensitive make the same assumption too. Right. We're just like, well, we're just people. And so they're like me and I'm like them. And, you know, we have these experiences. And, you know, when we're highly sensitive, we just think we're not as good at life quite often. We think that until we understand what's happening, we think that, like, I just can't deal the way other people dealt.
Yeah.
And so I remember particularly being a male growing up and people would say, oh, you're so sensitive. I was like, that doesn't feel good. You know, like, if you notice how sensitive I am, why are you saying that?
Yeah,
And so for so many of us, we just have no idea. Right? And so, yeah, I mean, even my psychic ability, I just assumed was what everybody else was experiencing. So every once in a while, like I'd get up and start walking across the room and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm answering the phone. And then the phone would ring and they're like, it didn't ring yet. I'm like, it never occurred to me those things. Yeah, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the phone has been ringing for like, and so, you know, or we'd be sitting in the, you know, talking to somebody and I'd bring up something that I thought was just common knowledge and they're like, oh my God, what? Like, and I'm like, didn't you just like talk about that?
You just said that to me.
And yeah, so there was a lot of evidence that I just kind of blew off. Yeah. And then when I was 30, I went to see a psychic and she was dead on about all this stuff. And as soon as I knew it was real and it wasn't some land of make-believe.
Yeah, you were like, wow, that's me too.
it totally, like, I started streaming in information at a whole new level and hearing voices, and then it's just changed over time. But, but yeah, it's, and most, pretty much people that are highly sensitive, part of that is having some sort of an extrasensory self. Mm-hmm. So we have, our gifts are tapped in some way where we know information and at some level that other people don't.
Right. So if people want to get involved with the things that you're doing or do some more research, what kind of programs?
And other programs that you've created.
Yeah.
And you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Find that.
Right. So on my webpage.
Yeah.
Where that
we're linking.
So there's a quiz on there, which is really fun, and it'll bring you into a series of videos as well. And so on there I have a video course that I put together, and it's so fun to see how this work translates over into video. It's pretty amazing how the energy is there and the shifts are available, and so it's a really easy way for people to connect with it. And, you know, and a lot of highly sensitive people don't want to be out in groups. I do live workshops as well, but so many people are like, is there a way I can do this without having to interact with anybody?
Right.
And so that's true for some. For others, they love the camaraderie, and so I do live workshops as well, which I post on my webpage. And then I do take people through it one-on-one as well, which, of course, you know, it's more of my time, so it's a little bit more of an investment. Right. But they really get a lot of fine-tuned information about what's going on for them. And then also I offer regular sessions, too, which are usually like 90-minute sessions.
Right, yeah.
But if, you know, there's quite a few ways to get started, even just by going to the webpage at first, checking out the videos and seeing what you think of it.
That's how it happened for us, and here we are really... invested and excited about this journey, so
awesome.
Well, perfect. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
We're excited about
for sure.
This.
Awesome. So check out the webpage and all the information below. Yeah.
I'm on Facebook as well, too.
Oh, perfect.
We'll link that too.
You'll find all the information for him.
Perfect.